They tell you success looks like this: the penthouse office, the private jet cutting through clouds, the cover of Forbes, the champagne toast at the IPO. They show you the highlight reel, the billion-dollar valuation, the genius founder on stage, hands raised like a conqueror. But nobody shows you what's underneath. Nobody shows you the bodies buried in the foundation. Welcome to Billionaire's Playbook. And today, we're pulling back the curtain on the dark side of the empire. Let's start with a name you know: Uber. In 2009, Travis Kalanick launched what the world called a revolution in transportation. By 2016, Uber was operating in 70 countries, valued at nearly $70 billion. It was the darling of Silicon Valley. Disruptive, brilliant, unstoppable. And then the stories started leaking out. A culture of systemic sexual harassment so deeply embedded that a single engineer's blog post, one woman's quiet, devastating account, shook the entire company to its core. Internally, complaints had been filed. HR had reviewed them, and HR had looked the other way, again and again, because the perpetrators were high performers. That's how empires think. Results justify everything. People are assets until they become liabilities. Then there's Facebook, born in a dorm room, built on a stolen idea, and scaled into a machine that now touches the minds of 3 billion people. The founding story reads like mythology, but the early emails, the depositions, the leaked documents, they tell a different story. One of ruthless data harvesting, of knowingly spreading misinformation because engagement was more valuable than truth, of internal researchers warning that the platform was tearing apart democracy, and executives burying the reports. Mark Zuckerberg once said he wanted to connect the world. What he built was a mirror that showed the world its most outraged, most tribal, most addicted reflection, and then sold that reflection to the highest bidder. And Enron. The name alone should send a chill down your spine. In the year 2000, Enron was the 7th largest company in America. Its executives were celebrated as visionaries. Its stock was soaring. Employees had their entire retirement savings tied up in company shares because management told them to, because management knew those shares were built on a fiction. When the lie collapsed in 2001, 20,000 employees lost their jobs overnight. Many lost their entire life savings. The architects of the fraud walked out with millions. Some went to prison, most didn't stay long enough. The house always wins, and the house never tells you the game was rigged. Behind every shining product, there is a place you're not supposed to think about. Elon Musk, love him or hate him, once described running multiple billion-dollar companies simultaneously as like eating glass and staring into the abyss. He has spoken openly about not sleeping, about the relentless machine of expectation he cannot step off of. The throne is never comfortable, and most kings never admit how much it costs them to sit in it. Some didn't just pay the price of success, they faked the receipt entirely. Elizabeth Holmes looked the world in the eye, in her black turtleneck, her Steve Jobs affect, her TED Talk voice, and told them she had changed medicine forever. Theranos, she promised, could run hundreds of blood tests from a single drop of blood. Investors poured in over $900 million. She appeared on the covers of magazines. She was called the next great American inventor. The machine didn't work. It never worked. Patients received false diagnoses. Some made life-altering medical decisions based on fabricated results. Holmes knew. She kept selling the dream anyway. Then there was WeWork. The company that convinced the world a real estate business was actually a tech startup powered by something called Community-Adjusted EBITDA, a metric its founder, Adam Neumann, essentially invented to make the numbers look better. At its peak, WeWork was valued at $47 billion. Neumann was celebrated as a visionary. He flew on a private jet. He had a surfboard loft. He reportedly hotboxed the company plane. When the IPO filing revealed the reality behind the curtain, the valuation collapsed. Within weeks, it had fallen to less than $10 billion. Neumann was pushed out, but not before walking away with nearly $1.7 billion in a personal exit package. The fraud failed. The fraudster prospered. The employees were laid off in the thousands. History doesn't remember the kind ones. It remembers the ones who won. Bill Gates understood the same playbook a century later, when Netscape threatened to make the operating system irrelevant, to move computing power to the browser. Microsoft didn't just compete. It bundled its own browser into Windows, used its monopoly position to strangle distribution, and fought a years-long antitrust battle that ultimately reshaped the tech industry. The judge in the original case called Microsoft's behavior predatory. Gates called it winning. In Silicon Valley, they have a phrase for it: move fast and break things. What they don't add is the part that comes after, and make sure it's someone else's things that break. Hubris is the hidden ingredient in every collapse. Kodak invented the digital camera in 1975. They buried it. Not because they couldn't see the future, but because they were too comfortable in the present, too addicted to the profit margins of film to cannibalize their own empire. By the time the wave crashed over them, there was no higher ground to run to. The gaming industry perfected the science of compulsion. Loot boxes designed by behavioral psychologists, dopamine loops engineered to feel like almost winning, mobile games aimed at children built to extract as much money as possible from the least impulse control. They don't call it addiction, they call it engagement. They don't call it exploitation, they call it monetization. The language of business has always been better at hiding sin than confessing it. Here is the truth that the magazine covers don't print, the one that the keynote speeches skip over, the one that gets edited out of the authorized biography. Power is never free. Every empire built in the light casts a shadow, and the shadow is always proportional to the height. For every brilliant product launch, there is a supplier being squeezed until they can't breathe. For every soaring stock price, there are workers whose wages haven't moved in a decade. For every visionary founder on a stage, there are thousands of people who built the thing they're taking credit for and will never be in the photograph. Success, at the highest levels, is not simply about talent or timing or even luck. It is about appetite. The willingness to want something so completely that the cost to others becomes a number in a spreadsheet. A risk to be managed, not a wrong to be corrected. The dark side of success is not a bug. It is a feature. And it has been, from the very beginning. The question is not whether you admire these empires. The question is, now that you see the foundation they were built on, what do you do with that knowledge? Every week on Billionaire's Playbook, we go where the polished documentaries won't. Behind the headlines, beneath the brand, into the rooms where the real decisions are made. If this story made you think twice about the empires you trust, if it made you look at success a little differently, then you're exactly who this channel was built for. Subscribe to Billionaire's Playbook. Hit the bell. Because the next story is darker, deeper, and closer to home than you think. The playbook is open. The page is turning. Don't look away.